The Big Ten and SEC are misguided, at least right now. The Big Ten and SEC want to work together to create a framework that guarantees the two of them 4 slots into the college football playoff. And on the surface, that sounds like a great idea, right? Because the two biggest entities in the sport are starting to finally throw their weight around, knowing that they are the two biggest entities in the sport and have the ability to put it on the table and let everybody see it. But it's not the best thing for the sport, at least not yet. I don't think that the Big Ten and the SEC have a leg to stand on in their mission to take 8 of the 12 spots guaranteed for themselves in the college football playoff. I don't think they have a leg to stand on. And it's really quite simple. And I don't know how, after hearing the argument, you can think any different. Very rarely am I going to sit here and tell you, you should think the way I think about this. Because, one, I don't like the word should. I can't decide what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what the SEC should do. I can't. The word should bothers me. But then, two, everybody's different. Everybody's got their own opinion. But on this one, I think you should share my opinion. How in the world can the SEC and the Big Ten say that they both deserve 4 guaranteed slots to the college football playoff before we've played one college football playoff game in the expanded era? And until you can answer me that question, I know right now, I think 14 of the top 18 programs in America, according to the AP Top 25, come from those two conferences. And if we get to a college football playoff where only 1 or 2 schools from each of those conferences have a playoff team, and we all feel as if the 3rd and 4th place teams from those conferences got jobbed, then we can have that conversation. But until the college football playoff has happened, I don't know how you can advocate for sweeping changes to the system that, like, y'all put in place really not that long ago. I don't know how you do it, and I don't know how you sell that to the greater college football world. Because what this essentially is, it's one of 2 things. It is, one, we'd be willing to settle for 3 or 2 guaranteed spots to the college football playoff. So we start the negotiation with, we want 4. It's the same. Like if I was to go into a job interview and I say, I want you to pay me $50,000. I want you to pay me $100,000, knowing that, like, well, that's ridiculous for McDonald's. Like, okay, well, can we meet somewhere in the middle? If you start with, like, hey, I want you to pay me $100 an hour. Well, that doesn't sound unreasonable. Well, it does sound unreasonable. But when you say, like, okay, well, what about like $35 an hour? Compared to $100 an hour, it sounds unreasonable. But compared to the $20 an hour McDonald's wanted to pay you, 35 sounds like McDonald's got to win. So when the Big Ten and SEC say, I want 4 guaranteed slots, well, would you be willing to take 2? Yeah, okay. And I'm on the record as saying, sorry, the voice is still not great. I announced volleyball tonight. 5 sets, 2 extra frames. Great, perfect. The idea that there are probably not already guaranteed slots for the Big Ten and SEC championship game performers, I think, is poppycock, ridiculous, balderdash, whatever. I think that it is more likely than not that if you make the SEC championship game and you lose, if you were one of the 11 best teams in America, you are still going to be in the playoff, because the argument is going to be you cannot hold my success against me. If I'm the 11th ranked team and I end up going to play the number 1 ranked team at the SEC and I lose, you are punishing my success throughout the regular season that you put me against the number 1 team in America. I naturally lost because they're better than me. And now you're punishing me for making the conference championship game. So I think more often than not, especially in divisionless conferences, that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to be guaranteed to get 2 teams into the playoff every year. And I think in the first couple of years, don't be surprised if that's also true of the Big 12 and the ACC, where it's just going to be like, hey, we need to ensure that these conference championship games matter. And it's why you can bitch and complain and moan that it's stupid that the team who wins the ACC might be the 23rd ranked team in America, or hell might not even be ranked. And they're going to get a bye while the number 5 team while the number 2 team in America could get a first round game, while the number 23 team gets a bye because they won their conference, because they need the conference championship games to matter. The conferences insist that the conference championship games matter because it's extra money for them. It's extra revenue for them. Hell, Fox pays the Big Ten like 55 in their last TV deal. Hell, I don't even know what it is now. In their last TV deal, when it was Fox and ESPN, Fox paid the Big Ten $55 extra million a year for 2 games, Ohio State, Michigan, and the Big Ten championship game. So when that size of money is on the line, that's before sponsorships, that's before tickets, that's before parking, merchandise, all of that stuff. There are millions of dollars on the line, so they need the conference championship games to matter. So the conference championship games are going to continue to matter. That's off the field. But on the field, they need them to matter because off the field, they matter. But the idea that the Big Ten and the SEC deserve for college football playoff berths before we've played a college football playoff, before we've had a controversy of like, well, how in the hell did that team get in, but this team didn't, is ridiculous. So option number 1 is they're negotiating with a like, hey, I'll float this number. I'd be willing to accept this. Option number 2 is it's a threat. It's a, if you don't give us what we want, we're going to take our ball and go home. We'll create our own playoff. We'll create our own 8-team playoff where 4 from the Big Ten plays 4 from the SEC. And by God, we'll figure out a national championship from then, because overwhelmingly, the winner of that playoff is going to be viewed as the national championship. As the national champion. I think that's a step backwards. I think that sucks because it took 150 years, and I've complained about this before. It took 150 years for college football to figure out, like, oh, you know what would be real cool is if we figured out who the champion was by playing football. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That's how every other sport does it. Like, you know who figured out who the best is if we play the game we're supposed to play. Yeah, duh. No kidding. And for that to then be like, well, we're not going to let everybody play. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to make a deal between these two that we all think is everybody's the best. The raspy voice really helps the Southern kind of stupid accent, by the way. It's ridiculous. If you're so great, line up against all comers and play. I'm on the record as like college football is a business masquerading as a sport, and I get that. I get it. But sometimes you have to like have some integrity and some sanctity of the sport matters. And I think in this instance, the sport still needs to matter. In 5 years, if we look at this and go, like, yeah, you know what? Like, the group of 5 representative is 0 for 5 and the margin of victory is like 40 points every year, then yeah, let's have conversations about fixing the situation. If we get to the point where like, hey, through 8 years of the college football playoff, the ACC is 1-7 in first round games, or the Big 12 is 2-6 in first round games, or whatever the case may be. And the SEC is 40-5 and the Big 10 is 32-7 or whatever. Then yeah, let's have that discussion. But before you've played one game in an expanded college football playoff, I think is ridiculous to then come to the table and be like, you know what, actually, we've rethought this, and we think the scales need to be incredibly tilted in our favor. I think that sucks. And I hope that you think that sucks too. But I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Should there be 4 guaranteed slots for the SEC? Should there be 4 guaranteed slots for the Big Ten? Should the Big Ten and SEC create their own playoff? Want to hear from you in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. See you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.